Good afternoon and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Steve Marks, Chair of the CMC Board of Trustees and President of Hannah News Service here in Columbus. Today's Metro Club live streaming is presented by the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch and PNC. Thank you all. In the spring of 2020, COVID restrictions shuttered most live events immediately. The many industries that support live entertainment, festivals, conventions, and other in-person events, everything from food service to hotels to travel to all forms of support services, have struggled probably more than any other segment of our economy. Perhaps that's why we're all feeling such a huge relief and a breath of fresh air that in-person events are coming back. Let's hear what's going on in the event industry from our panel. I'll introduce the panelists by name and position, but you can find more about each of them in your forum flyer and online. So please welcome John R. Page, General Manager, Greater Columbus Convention Center, ASM Global. Denise Rehg, Executive Director of the Columbus Symphony Orchestra. John Page, founder and principal, Page Tech Limited, and our host, Hayleigh Colombo, staff reporter for Columbus Business First. Hayleigh, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me and for hosting this important conversation. So I want to give each of you a chance first to kind of go down the line and share what the impact of COVID-19 was on your specific organization, and John, for you down there for your business. So can we start with John from the Convention Center? Can you share just, briefly about, what the heck happened the last the last year and a half?
How much time do we have? No. Jarring would be, if we were to use one word as part of that, and then kind of to fill it in from there. But jarring concludes with resiliency at the end of the day on kind of where the industry is and where we're going forward. If you look at the travel and tourism industry, annually it supports about 78,000 jobs, kind of pre-COVID, and there's close to the numbers that are spent economically, as part of the visitor spend to go along with that. So when you take that, kind of part of it out from happening, the major conventions, the major sporting, the trade shows and such, and from a convention center specifically, we're talking about in the several hundreds. For that case, for us there. We're talking about specifically for the convention center, close to about a 200-person workforce that was reduced to 35 employees. So that impact was, as I said, jarring, but at the same time, it became a process of resiliency, of being able to understand that even the small victories were things that we grasped onto and looking at that ultimate light at the end of the tunnel as we exit out of COVID for the most part and get back to business in this new normal.
Denise, what about you?
So I would say that the Columbus Symphony was, in some respects, this is the power having producers in your local community bring to the table. All of our musicians live and work here. So when COVID hit, it became not a matter of could we do something, it became a matter of what could we do. And so we stayed, like everybody else did, in the shock mode for the first couple of weeks, and then we proceeded to create an entire plan around what we could do. And I've got a dashboard on your tables that show what we did accomplish. We accomplished incredible things. It's enough things that we got national attention for our handling of the COVID. I tell everybody it was only one line, but it was the New Yorker who said that the Columbus Symphony was of worthy note because of the way we handled the pandemic. So and we have continued on doing what we could. We did 20 free concerts for the community in 9 days in September. We're back out there at Picnic now, and we decided early on to give this community the biggest picnic they've ever seen. So we have both Michael Bolton and En Vogue this summer. But that is the stance we've taken all along. We've taken advantage of the fact of the assets we have and that they are here, and we have just continued to plow forward.
And John, what about you, and how did it affect your business?
Well, first of all, when the pandemic hit, the first thing we did was panic. Our phone started ringing off the hook of all of our cancellations of all of our events, starting about the time that the Arnold, kicked off the cancellations and postponements. So what I did was I was worried about my staff. Obviously, we had to shut everything down. So I ended up renting a van, putting all my construction equipment, taking my 15-year-old kid, and we drove to LA. I lived with my brother and did construction jobs for about 6 weeks just to pay the bills. You know, my rent's still due on my warehouse and my offices and all the utilities. So, but then the phone started ringing and clients wanted to transition into virtual events. So we actually pivoted. My staff and I brought some of them back. We cleaned 1/3 of my warehouse is a scene shop, so we cleared that out. I already had all the staging and lights and sound and video set up, so we built a sound stage. And we're doing virtual events even this week. So we managed to pivot and save probably 25% of our staff. And now we're slowly bringing them back.
So transitioning to the topic of, recovery, where do things stand right now at each of your organizations in relation to 2019? Are you 50% covered, less, more? And when do you think you will recover back to at least, 2019 levels? John, we can start with you.
John R.?
Yes, John R.
All right.
Convention John.
That's it. There's a reason why we're not sitting next to each
Yeah.
other, I believe. So, all right. Where we are in comparison to 2019, staffing-wise, obviously reduced by far. And we may not get back to that number. That's something that I've said oftentimes because we found an opportunity to pivot, to be able to look at position opportunities as they are, to be able to merge together responsibilities, and again, seeing kind of the wherewithal within our team members. From an event perspective, from an industry perspective, that's always a hotly debated subject. Some say 23, some say 24. I'm of the mindset that we're beginning that process now. Is that July 1 becomes kind of a reboot, not just for Columbus and the Greater Columbus Convention Center, but this industry. And for us here in Columbus, we start off with one of our largest annual events, the Cultivate Convention and Trade Show, which is the top 200 trade show in the world, and the only one we have of its kind in Columbus. So as we look at kind of what's to come, and if we use 2019 and this city wrapped its arms around ASAE, and we look forward to 2023 with PCMA, the Professional Convention Management Association, we stand well suited, both from an industry perspective and here for Columbus, of the go forward and what this new normal would be. And we're excited. There's an enthusiasm about this industry, and we're ready to go forward.
And where do you expect, what are you budgeting for as far as percent to, 2019?
From an event or financial, or kind of some combination there?
Events.
Okay, events. 2019, we were averaging in kind of the years prior, somewhere in 300 plus events. As we look at kind of this year alone, we're going to, end up somewhere doing 130 to 140 events in Q3, Q4 alone. And we've had about 74, 75 thus far. So if we look at the numbers, that's 215, 220. We're not far off. If we look at coming into 22, the momentum that's there on future bookings, we're averaging about a dozen leads a week at the convention center alone. Our short-term business is phenomenal. My team tells me bring more sales managers. I said I'm trying to be able to get there to handle the volume. So we're not far off pace in understanding kind of where there was a lot of kind of the wait and see what would happen with 2021, particularly as the state was allowed to reopen and people were able to have in-person events. John Page mentioned earlier kind of the hybrid component that's out there, and that's still there, but we're also seeing kind of that excitement about the return to in-person events. We haven't done as many hybrid, and a large swath of our meeting community is saying we want to get back to hosting events in person, help us do it.
And then on the financial piece of it, I know we've talked before about how some of the events are smaller than they once were. So as far as, bringing in revenue, is it less?
It's less and less. And prior to COVID, the Convention Center, I'm proud to say, was a profit center. So we return a profit each year at the Convention Center. And in 2020, the main year of COVID, we weren't. And 21 will be that same, but at a less number. As we look towards 22 and 23 in the future, we see that negative becoming a positive, kind of number. And as I look at this year, 21, that's the greatest opportunity area for us with customers. Because again, they're understanding their budgets, they're seeing where they may be able and where their attendance can grow towards. and obviously what their spend may be. So although we're scheduled to, budgeting for a loss in 21, I think we can reduce that number, what that deficit will be. And that's something as we go into 2022, we'll begin that process in the next few months, but I anticipate we're going to be budgeting a profit, a small one, but again, it's a return to getting us back to where we were normally.
In 22.
In 22.
Cool.
And
Cool.
a few people in this room are going to quote me on that.
Denise, what about you? Where do things stand with what you're able to do, or maybe how many, I don't know how you track that as far as maybe how many ticket sales or visitors or anything like that? Where do things stand in terms of compared to 2019, and when do you expect to get back to normal?
Okay, so we do have an entire recovery plan, but truthfully, I do want to share that we ended the first year of the pandemic, our 2020 season, in the black, and we're going to end the 21 season in the black. So it was, in our case, we're in a very different scenario, and I actually feel for all these people who are dependent on outside things coming in, because we were able to fully manipulate what we do at the Symphony and how we serve the community. So, in some respects, we're a bunch of romantics. So we likened ourselves during the pandemic to the embargo of Leningrad, where everything had to be done by the Symphony to shine some light into the darkness. So we took that very, very seriously. And so we were here for the community in every possible way that we could. Free concerts, we built out our websites, we worked with the school district to get a third grade curriculum embedded in their third grade, which they did. We made mindful music moments available to all grade schools and high schools in the Columbus city schools. So we went from 7 schools to 30 schools enrolled in that. We had a goal 2 years ago of doubling the number of children we served. During COVID, we went from 23 2 years ago. Of course, that was a 3-year goal to double it, but during COVID, we hit 55,000 kids. So we have never considered ourselves as having shut down or stopped. And if you say, what is the measurement we're going to use moving forward, it's sort of an engagement with the community measure. So we could look at ticket sales, and of course they're down. People are not that comfortable yet coming back. But Picnic with the Pops, we had a goal of selling $45,000 worth of tickets on June 12th when we opened, and we sold 92,000.
Wow.
So the reality is the community's ready to come back. We just have to help them do that. And so we're creating all kinds of incentives for the community, and we are saying we're here for you, and we mean it. So all children 6 to 16 will be free in the Mass to Work Hall next year. And we've developed accessibility programs so that if you are handicapped in any way and you require somebody to bring you down, we will give that person a free ticket. So we are going to develop this idea of being here for the community, and the measurement is going to be from the number of people who attend and are involved with the Symphony. We need the ticket numbers, but the Symphony is also in a good position in that respect because 65% of our budget comes from donations. There are many of you here in the room, so thank you very much, who are donors to the Symphony. But that gives us the opportunity to make the best sense we can out of how to serve the community. And that is how we are going to be looking at rebuilding moving forward. But we do not have any restrictions right now. Well, we made it a little smaller. I've got our good friends from the CDDC in the back there. We made the numbers a little smaller, but starting July 1, we intend to open that for full capacity. We expect In Vogue to sell out. That probably means a 5,000 person audience. Michael Bolton, that is the real Michael Bolton, will likely sell out at 5,000 tickets. So we're just plowing ahead.
Okay. Page Tech, John.
Well-
What do you, and where do you think stand in terms of 2019 for your business?
Well, we're very optimistic about 2021 because it's coming back with a vengeance for us. Up until, we lost revenue, obviously, through the first half of this year, up until, the vaccinations reached a level that the CDC and everybody were opening back up. But I can tell you that our number one challenge right now is finding labor. We have a big contracting force of contractors that we use for certain positions, and we're competing with everybody else for that time. So we lost Red Wine Boom, which was a big event for us. We didn't lose it. It's obviously been postponed. But moving forward, everybody is coming back on the second half. Many of them are adding the hybrid version of their events by live streaming incorporated. With the city of Upper Arlington, we do their Music in the Park series. Many of them are drive-ins now with video walls, so we're actually adding value to the shows that we produce. And so we're hopeful that it'll be 2019 or better. And it's hard for me to say now at the beginning of July because literally my phone is ringing off the hook again in a good way. So we're happy.
That's good. And so not to be a downer, but what is the biggest threat to your recovery for each of your organizations? I know obviously there's, I was just reading this morning about the Delta variant being, something obviously very concerning, but is it that? Is it consumer sentiment? Is there something else? Is it labor issues? What's the biggest threat to the recovery right now for each of you? We can start with.
Labor.
Oh, okay.
And again, I can just kind of, because that's what it is. And that's not just independent to the convention center. I mean, you can look around the room, your own kind of personal lives and individual businesses, you're going through that same aspect or know someone who is. And so where you look at kind of the workforce pieces I led with earlier, to have a staff of 200, kind of close to 200, and then you lose close to 70, 80% of that staff, and that process of building back up, again, won't be a swift process. We're talking about month 17 now of this pandemic, and it's still going at some level, and there's an entire workforce. Many have moved on. Many have chosen not to, and not just here at the convention center, but many have chose to leave the industry, kind of piece of that. As I said before, 78,000 jobs within the industry, about 77.6 kind of billion spent, kind of as part of that, and about 4 million trips to Columbus, kind of annually as part of that. That's a huge piece. And so when you look at the labor workforce that it takes to supply that industry, inclusive of the convention center and what Denise does and what John does as well, and not being there and not sure how quickly it's going to be there. So there becomes the workforce development piece, there becomes kind of the educational piece, there become a lot of variables to be able to create a new workforce as we move forward. But in the short term, it's as John Page Tech, I want to make sure I get that right, not speaking third person there myself, but as we look at kind of that workforce, it's going to be one that's a lot different. It's going to be one that you have to use different suppliers to be able to meet the needs that we have at hand. We have to be nimble. We can't lose kind of the promise of service excellence that we have here in Columbus. And as we move forward and people choose this destination to come to and the wonderful facilities that are part of our community here.
All right. What about you, Denise? Biggest threat to recovery?
Well, until I saw how things were going at a picnic, the biggest one was definitely people's trepidation to return to normal and to actually regather. And that is so key to what we do, right? Because we really believe that we're a really important part of the social fabric of the community. We create shared experiences for people. So I think that for us, even today, our biggest issue really is going to be our ability to market and to speak to people in such a way that they come back and that they're willing. So marketing and being heard is always an issue for the Symphony. There's so much noise out there. It used to be you had 4 major networks, and right? So it gets increasingly difficult. That's why we're trying so many different ways of interacting with the community. But I do think that it's going to take, I know many people, even in my industry, who have returned to wearing masks. They're just more comfortable with them. So I think it really is going to be about whether people feel comfortable coming back out. It's one thing to be out there for picnic. It's another thing to be there for Renee Fleming in the hall. That's a big risk for us. Renee Fleming is very, very expensive, and if people don't want to come back to the hall, that will be a problem.
Yeah, I would, labor, absolutely. And as John R. Page of the Convention Center mentioned, training, we have a younger staff now because this has been an opportunity for some of the labor force to reevaluate where they want to be. And since there's a shortage of labor, many of them are picking and choosing, how do I put this? Not better jobs than Page Tech, but maybe higher paying jobs, with bit better benefits. So we're competing with our competitors in that. That's, I think, the number one thing would be labor for us and the cost of it.
If I can add to John's
Yeah.
last point there on the labor piece and kind of the choice of choosing other industries, we're hearing more about the volatility of our industry, which we never heard before, is that a certain workforce is saying, hey, I'm not sure if that's going to be stable to get back into. During this time period there, everything went away all of a sudden. And so you say come back into it, What if it happens again? What if this, Delta variant, as you said? So what we're hearing that's kind of resonating even much more so is that, for the longest time, we looked at this industry and everything that came with it, the face-to-face contact, the personal communication, and then it goes away. And so that workforce is saying, I'll go do something else with a greater security behind it. Maybe I can work from home as well as part of that. So yeah, a lot of different challenge, that we knew that came out of this process of COVID.
Are you finding people? Like, is it a matter of calling up the old team and being like, hey, like, come back? Or is it like those people are not wanting to come back?
It's a combination. The ones that say, let's get the band back together, I'm glad to hear from them. And there's other ones who, again, as you look at 16, 17 months later, they've moved on. And so, we're seeing a little bit more of that in this more recent term as we begin adding staff back, particularly because the time period that it's been. So, the workforce now is one of recruitment. It's one of the competition factor for the convention center. We're not competing with the hotels or some of the other venues, but we're competing with the Amazons, and we're competing with, those type of locales and kind of what they pay. You look at the recruitment piece and, the incentive of trying to be able to get that, and you're matching a Giant Eagle, for example, which is a little bit different, or if you look at a White Castle, you're matching kind of the pay rate and understand, does it become kind of a wage as you go up and they go up, and can you go up with that? So a lot of different kind of factors into that. But the biggest piece of not having that workforce there for the convention center specifically becomes the institutional knowledge. For our convention center, prior to COVID, we were about 64% repeat business. So 6 out of every 10 events that we would have, and 300 plus, we knew. They were with us every year, their partners, their family. And those staff members also had that knowledge, and that goes away. And so you're training not only a new workforce, but one that doesn't understand kind of where we are with those events. And the customer is going to say, I need that same service or greater in this environment because, again, fill in the blank, the safety, all those things that come when doing events kind of in a current COVID climate and kind of post-COVID climate.
Denise, has the workforce challenge impacted your organization at all?
It really has. And I'll tell you, I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, but we crack a lot of jokes at the Symphony. So I'm not calling it COVID-19 anymore. I'm calling it Coma-19 because we're having such a hard time getting, so many sectors had to really shut down. I mean, I could use our caterers as an example, right? They're having a harder time coming back. We've been in full force the whole time. And so we're trying to get people to come along with us. But yes, for all of our partners, some of them have been critically affected. We lost our caterer that we've had, our caterer for the Commons. We lost them 3 weeks before picnic began because they simply couldn't find the workforce to do it. So we are being forced to go through a whole bunch of different things in order to conduct business as close to what we want to make it appear normal as we can. But the reality is yes, we get affected by it from that perspective. And even when it comes to the guest artists, we are using our own musicians more. We're just starting to come back out, bringing the big names this summer, bringing big names in the fall. But excuse me, until recently, that was a problem. Because people that we were booking were canceling their contracts and et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it has affected us, not to the same degree as it has to people, because our musicians, like I said, they're here, so that's not a problem. But our partners suffer greatly, and that affects what we can do.
Yeah, I would add that, from our perspective, I think about our labor force is pretty well trained, but honestly, we do a show on a Wednesday. If we're going to get somebody to work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 p.m. at night, chances are they don't have a regular 9-to-5 job, right? So the labor force that we select from are typically stagehands that work not only for us and our competitors, but also I see Mr. Michael Gatto from Case out here. He's the GM of the local arenas. We're competing with them as well when they bring in a Billy Joel or somebody on that same day. So we're now at the point where we're going to try to concentrate on retraining training some of our newer guys. But as John R. Page from the Convention Center pointed out, there's a skill level that is inherent in our stagehands and there's a whole different culture that it takes a while to learn. You learn it through experience. So it's going to take a little bit longer for us to train those folks. And as John R. Page from the Convention Center mentioned earlier, some of those folks that used to would work for us one day, and then the Nationwide, then the Schottenstein Center, then for one of our competitors, suddenly, without any events going on anywhere, they took a job at Amazon, at the distribution center, or somewhere else. And now they're getting a regular check instead of 5 different ones at different times. They have benefits that are coming in that they never probably had before, or else they did it through on their own. So those are the kinds of things that we're competing with. But luckily, in our organization, we have a great core group of employees that we've had ever since we started 16 years ago, or 17 years ago. They're very loyal, and we were able to, through our transition and pivoting, keep them on board for the virtual events and our drive-in movies and our drive-in concerts and so forth. So that's something that we're looking forward to optimistically in 2022, when we feel we'll have probably our best year ever, based on this and the addition of the hybrid events.
So Denise mentioned kind of, consumers being comfortable again. The AP reported yesterday that June marked a 5th straight month of increases in consumer confidence, and that in June it was the highest since the pandemic started. So are you seeing, with regard to your clients and your customers, are you seeing that kind of translate to what you're hearing from people, or are you still hearing trepidation? And I know, John, from the convention center, you are dealing with, we've talked before about how, leisure travel is back up, but the convention piece is almost kind of a different thing, a different animal. So what are you hearing from your clients?
We are seeing that positive kind of nature on the consumer confidence. And for the convention center, again, it became, and I believe this is something Denise noted, how do you market that along the way? You don't market that now to say come back. You have to do that throughout what this pandemic has been. And we've been fortunate that the convention center took a pivot, during COVID. We know that the mass gatherings that we come known for couldn't happen. And so we kind of recalibrated, and we put in place a program called Leave No Stone Unturned, which has kind of been reported out. And we hosted everything from weddings to yoga to, movies at the convention center. But again, it kept business in. It kept in the consumer's kind of, psyche. The convention is open for business. They're doing different things. The crowds are smaller, but we're hearing about their safety programs. We're hearing those good experiences. We're not hearing about any COVID outbreaks at the convention center. So that became key for us. And then being able to keep in constant contact, that works, right?
Yeah.
Okay. With our customer base, as far as on the go forward, the enhancements to the convention center from a safety perspective, the fact that upgrading the air quality in the convention center and having that same quality as you would have in hospitals, UV lighting installation on our vertical transportation, kind of units. Those things also from a messaging standpoint, to be able to tell the story is that when you're ready, we're ready for you as well. And look at what we have in place that you feel comfortable when you come back to our venue.
Do you mind if
Yeah,
I just,
go for it.
So I would say this too. 3 months ago, we brought healthcare professionals in from Ohio Health, thank you, Ohio Health, who actually talked to our board and talked to the staff about something that at the time we were talking about a lot, but it was actually not long-lived, that word languishing. So it entered the English lexicon, meaning something different than we normally would think about. They were talking about people coming out of COVID and how a lot of people were suffering from languishing. That's where the coma thing came from, right? The people were suffering from languishing. The Symphony has found that people got over that a lot faster than we thought they would, hence our very, very conservative numbers for the number of picnic tickets we would sell, and then in the reality, we more than doubled those. So I think that you can see it, you can feel it, and I think the more we feel it among ourselves, the better, because it is contagious, right? Confidence and a belief that we are safe and that we can regain our lives is important. And I think the human spirit is what the human spirit is, and we're getting over this pretty quickly.
What about you, John? I know that you were saying your phone is ringing a lot, but are your customers feeling good?
Our customers are ready to get out there and do it right now. And we're also finding that some of these events are being better attended than pre-COVID. And also in the giving on the 501c3 side, many of the charities that we supported, even during virtual, people were giving more than they would if they were in person. Now there's some, obviously the silent auction, those kind of things that you can't control, but if there was an upside, it was that they had a captured audience at home that was willing to go Zoom or live, view a live stream. But as far as our customers for what we're doing, we've been waiting to get back since it started, right? So now they're moving forward with the live event portion, and in some cases, hybrid.
Cool. And we're going to move on to our in-person and live stream questions in just a few minutes, but I wanted to ask, I know that we've talked about this concept of a new normal, and everyone's probably tired of hearing about that, but do you see things in your respective industries, do you see things as going back to normal, or do you see it as a new normal in terms of your business has fundamentally changed, or or what you're doing is fundamentally different or like altered because of COVID-19?
Some combination of all of those.
Okay. And how so? Yeah.
I think a lot of what the new normal will be things that will continue throughout. I think the focus upon safety and different aspects will be here to stay. An example of that is, prior to COVID, most customers will say, let me see your evacuation plan for the facility. If there's an emergency, tell me how I get out of here. What that will be still there, but you also will see, and customers are asking now, let me see your safety and industrial hygiene plan. What are you doing? What does the reopening look like? What does the revamping of your events look like? So that becomes a constant document that's going out from a customer base. The masking may be momentary at some level, and there's always going to be, I think, a comfort zone of that, particularly in the immediate short term. From a convention center perspective, we are saying here now is that we're going to operate based upon where our customers want us to be. So if they want masking for their events, then we're going to make sure that masking is enforced for their events. That becomes our job to do. If they don't, then our signage says we recommend, if you have not been vaccinated, that you wear a mask. It's not a mandate of any level, but it's one of a strong recommendation that if you haven't been vaccinated, be respectful for others and make sure that, we encourage you to be able to wear your mask. But as you look at kind of that kind of new norm, and what that will be, and then getting back to, what the convention center or what the convention, the industry itself was prior to COVID. I think I bumped the microphone. I apologize there. We'll get back there. We'll get back there. The future pace bookings are ahead of schedule. The out-year bookings, we have conventions and events booked through 2028 or 29. So out there, so the long term looks good, for our destination. We were on an extension, as I mentioned before, with the ASA event in 2019, and the stories I go around telling, and Mr. Ross and team does as well, is we have that same story to tell, that Columbus is the destination of choice here, and these are the reasons why. That we have a message that we can give about this community and how we're a collaborative community, and that can-do spirit, even more enhanced by what COVID kind of brought to us. I mentioned resiliency earlier, and that even much more so as we take this next pivot and call it a 2.0 in some ways. That will be the hallmark for Columbus and getting back to the business at hand, getting back to business as it was, and then growing the business as we go out into the future.
One example I kind of wanted to ask you about with regard to the new normal is, I know, several of us in this room were, kind of at the governor's initial press conference back in March 2020 with regard to the Arnold and how that was such a sea change moment. I know Experience Columbus annual meeting, I think, was supposed to be that night or was that night, and it was what a weird memory looking back on. But
recall it very well.
yeah, no, it was like I always think back to that and how we were all crowded in a room together, right? And didn't really realize how much of an impact this would all have on us. But with regard to the Arnold, I know that the event that kind of started everything off here in Columbus, this year it's going to be a little bit different. So it kind of speaks to a new normal. And what are you expecting, with when that kind of expo piece of it comes back in 2022? Will it be back to normal, or will there be a piece of it that's going to be altered or different?
It will be altered and different, and I'll go back for a second to your earlier point, Hayleigh. Little did we know. Yeah. So, and back in being the general manager for the convention center, and I think I was due to go over to the Experience Columbus annual meeting that night and pick up an award on behalf of the convention center. And I said, I'm in a room right now with the governor's people and the Arnold people, and we're trying to figure something out about this event. And then that became the kind of cancellation of aspects of the Arnold, not allowing certain portions of the event to happen, and a trade show at that point that was about 80% complete. So people in from the 20, 30 plus countries that represent the Arnold event kind of happening. You fast forward into that point of what Arnold will be in this year of 2021 and then what it will be 2022. 2021 will be just the Arnold Classic. And so what that is kind of the foundation that the Arnold event was built upon, the bodybuilding piece. So that will be an event that takes place in September. I believe tickets are going on sale after the July 4th holiday. So the hope is to get 4,000 to 5,000 people here at the Convention Center, which will be a full capacity in the room that is housed the Patel Grand Ballroom, which many of you know is the one with the very pretty lights. It has 30,000 color combinations. So it'll be in that room. As we spring forward to 2022, that becomes the return of the Arnold Sports Festival. So the event that, this is the first event that was kind of the sea change when COVID, kind of rawed its ugly head here for us. And the plan is, and I mentioned earlier in some discussion, is we've been meeting about that event for close to 5 or 6 months of planning out what next year looks like. So there's always a thought process that, the Arnold event will happen. Maybe it becomes a little bit different based upon the situations on the ground and where we sit right now and planning for 2022. It'll be the Arnold Sports Festival. Differences as part of that, maybe things such as time ticket entry, a less exhibit hall floor. Those of you who have been to the Arnold event, it's what I call the crush of enormity, just sheer humanity all at once. And it'll be that at a certain level, but less exhibitors to crush upon and greater spacing as part of that. But the event will happen. Potentially less sporting events that are part of that. The Arnold event had went over the course of time from being just a bodybuilding event to about close to 40 individual event sports and competition, some that serve as Olympic qualifiers. And the note that I always give about the Arnold is in a pre-COVID environment, there are more athletes to compete in the Arnold Sports Festival than the Summer and Winter Olympics Games combined in a year. So again, that's what that event is, kind of at its highest. But as we look forward to next year, coming into a different venue with obviously these higher safety kind of protocols in place and infrastructure in place, and then also looking at kind of the attendance piece and how do you navigate that back in to where a customer, in this case the Arnold event, let's put less on the show floor, let a better navigation of people occur. Maybe we bring them in blocks of sections to be able to, again, speak to the confidence piece, the safety piece of that you're coming to the Arnold event, you're getting that same experience, but you're getting it at different levels. And in fact, we're going to bring you in, we'll bring you out, and you can move on to another event within the convention center or otherwise.
Cool. Denise, new normal or back to normal or a combination? And how does that look for you?
Well, I think what's important for me to say about the Symphony is the Symphony was preparing to launch on a new normal 2 months before COVID happened. We had gone through an 18-month process with the board on a strategic plan. And this does not sound earth-shattering, but those of you who are well familiar with symphonies, you will see the point I'm trying to make here. Our new mission statement, which they adopted in January, is to inspire and build a strong community through music. That is quite different than the mission statements of your typical symphony, which talks about, Pam's nodding her head, talks about the excellence of music and about our responsibility to produce the right. We had clearly decided after 18 months of work that we wanted to provide service to this community that would lighten and brighten the community's, everybody in the community's lives. And so when COVID struck, in some respects, here we 18 months of this work, we said, holy cow, here's the opportunity to prove it in action. And that is exactly what we did, and that really, really helped us. It gave us a path into what we really thought we would do, and since we had all been working on it for 18 months, we were enthusiastically embracing the idea of how do we serve the community. So this is what I'll tell you. We will go back to some things that you perceive to be normal for the Symphony, but we were already moving away from some of those things. We will do them in addition. Fundamentally, we learned way too much during COVID to go back to the old way of doing business. We will provide the big hall concert productions, we'll do all of that, but we're also going to be showing up in the neighborhoods, parks of communities where they don't have access to the Symphony. We're differentiating between what we call the underserved and the unserved, so we're going out to places like Nelsonville and Marietta. But the reality is we will return to normal for those who like to see the Masterwork concerts. We have a great Masterwork series, but we are going to become about so much more than that. And we're going to continue doing the good work we did during COVID. We already have a week of free concerts planned for August. So stand by. But that's the way we view it.
Cool. John, what about you?
I agree with both my colleagues. For the patrons that are used to going to a live event, they're going to see that same experience. I'm confident of that. But we're also going to be adding those virtual events. We had one event we did last year it was supposed to be an in-person event for around 12,000 people in Cambridge. We transitioned it to a virtual event, and that was in August. And then in November, they said, you know what? We'd like to do another virtual event. So they invented an event called the Winter Giveaway or whatever. We did that in our studio, and they will continue to do that from now on because they were hoping to recover some of the lost revenue from not having the live audience. And instead, they found out, wow, this is actually cheaper to produce, and we make almost as much money. So they're still going to do the live event moving forward because that's what their patrons expect. But we can see that. So it'll be a new normal for us. And most of our live event customers want to continue that same thing. Obviously, we do the Columbus Marathon as an example. That's always going to be an in-person race, right? I mean, they'll still have the virtual component as far as, stay at home and give the money, but it's still something that, Columbus wants and runners want and the city loves, so that'll happen. And Red, White, and Boom, if it comes back in the fall, which we're hoping it will, it'll be different this year, but next year it's going to be coming back with a vengeance like everything else.
Great. Well, thanks so much to all of you. So now it is CMC's tradition to take audience questions. Jane Scott of CMC is curating questions from the live stream audience and for our in-house audience. Please keep your questions brief and to the point. Jane, what is our first question?
Well, and I'll just remind you, I'm going to ask some from the online viewers that have been submitted. So anyone who has a question, get up here behind me and we'll alternate. So Hope Cotter from the Columbus Chamber of Commerce says, can you talk a little bit more about what you're going to be seeing in hybrid events as we move forward?
We can have John page from page.
So hybrid events. So what we're seeing is, I think, similar to the component of this event today, right? You sold tickets to a virtual event, and I think some events will want to do that because they'll have a much broader reach to their audience and potential audience market. But I think, I would say hybrid events such as a live event with a live stream component is one thing that'll happen. Also, we talked earlier, for the city of Upper Arlington, we do their music in the parks. We did drive-in concerts, and early on when the CDC had a lot stricter requirements. So I think you can see similar creative ways to do events, not necessarily in the traditional fashion.
Ann Turpin from The Ohio State University, what does the job outlook look like beyond hourly roles for students graduating with a degree in hospitality?
I'll jump on that one. We can tell Ann we'll be looking for her people coming in. So I've got the good fortune of actually being the board chair for the hospitality management program at Ohio State, which Ann is the advisor for. But it's definitely one that's plentiful, that we will say, particularly as we've talked about during this conversation of what left the marketplace here. So those opportunities will be there for those students graduating from Ohio State and our wonderful colleges and university in Central Ohio right away for them. And the advancement may also be a lot quicker than it's been in the past as a result of that.
All right, this is also for you, John, our page.
Yes, ma'am.
The conventions centers took on an extremely unique role at the beginning of the pandemic when they were suddenly hospitals and testing sites and vaccination centers. Like everybody, no one outside of New York probably knew what the Javits Center was, and then suddenly it was where there was a CNN press conference every day. Is there a legacy from that in terms of how the community looks at a convention center and how the convention centers engage with the community?
I think absolutely, and it's something that I think that was not spoken of enough, during COVID is, I think one of the most critical roles of a convention center is to be the community's convention center. At the end of the day, we talk about the benefit and opportunity on bringing events in from the outside and the conventions and those things that travel here to us. But at the heart of hearts, the convention centers, again, not just speaking of Columbus, you can speak of Javits there in New York and otherwise, you have an inherent role of being there for your community and making sure that you embrace the community, that you're out in the community. The community knows that the opportunity is there for them to be able to not just bring events there, but to resonate, this is mine. I'm part of this community. This is a convention center, and they feel part of that fabric. When we look at kind of what COVID kind of brought forward to us, then it became one of the reach there with the community, if that relationship wasn't already established, and then resonating it back in. We were set up to be a surge hospital here in Columbus. Never had to be activated, but it was a 1,000-room hospital that was set up for a few months as part of that. We pivoted to the courts. here, you're kind of following that process, which, as I said, will end on today. If I look at some of other convention centers for the company I work for, but then otherwise, they have been homeless shelters. At some level, they've been vaccination sites, they've been distribution centers for food and getting it out to the communities and otherwise. And I think the legacy coming out of that is, again, just the convention centers speak towards the larger community within itself, and we need to take that role and responsibility serious, and it's mission critical as we go forward.
Hi, good afternoon. Micheline Geyser with the Columbus Metropolitan Library. I work in marketing and event planning. The Washington Post published a story a few weeks ago talking about hygiene theater in the events industry and how things like temperature checks and digital menus and touchless everything. And John, you talked about the air quality system, how event planners and facilities and organizers are putting some of those protocol in place. And I just kind of wanted to dig into that a little more deep. I've been thinking a lot about it as we start back up. And what precautions do you think are needed and what make attendees feel good?
Wow. That is sure. I'll let you take that one. I may riff like 5 minutes on that one alone, so.
Do you want me to go?
Please, go ahead.
I'm going to say, we still, we sanitize all of our microphones between every use. We still do that today. My staff, I required them to get a vaccination so that our clients are at ease. And then we still talk to our clients before we do an event to gauge their comfort level, and if they want us to wear masks, we will. I think in all cases, if we're fully vaccinated, they didn't require it, and most of our clients were also fully vaccinated, like I think most of the people in this room. So that issue became moot. But we still sanitize everything. We still do it was kind of a good thing to do, right? My gear has never looked cleaner, right? We've been, my guy, when it first hit, and I had staff before I realized the depth, I think in March, when it first hit for that first month, we spent a lot of time relamping all of our moving light fixtures and, painting all of our cases and getting everything else organized because we were very optimistic, not so wisely, we were optimistic that it would come back within a month or something. Of course, as we know, it didn't happen. But as far as hygiene and what we do, we continue those things today, and I'm sure that they do at the Convention Center at Symphony as well.
I would like to answer that question as well, though, too, because I think the Symphony has a lot of firsthand experience in that. So we've been doing live concerts since October of 2020. So we've gone through this phase where we started out where we had limited capacity, 250 people. People wore masks. We took their temperatures. We did, right? As time went on, we started to eliminate those things. So we eliminated the taking of temperatures. Nobody cared. We eventually got to the last concerts in May of this year, and people were roundly complaining that they had to wear their masks. So the fact of the matter is, at that point, we could have 600 people in the hall, right? Then we go into, and when we do all those community concerts, we had hand sanitation stations. We all wore masks, even though they were outdoors. So we have progressed almost back to the point of what we consider normal. Picnic was our last experiment with that. So we did a reduced capacity picnic in June. So the June 12th, 17th, and 24th concerts were all reduced capacity. We wanted to see how people felt about it. Starting July 1, like I said, we're going back to full capacity. We haven't heard one complaint, not one complaint. We're not taking temperatures. We're not telling people they have to wear their mask. As we approach herd immunity, I think it becomes less of an issue. But I think the people who are really worried about COVID are vaccinated. So they're showing up at these things knowing that they're going to be outdoors, which is safe. There's going to be a lot of people. But if they're vaccinated, they feel comfortable enough to do that. We've had almost as many as 3,000 people out there. 2,800, I think, is what we opened with on the night of Queen. It was on the music of Queen. I want to make sure I say that. It was not the real Queen, even though we have the real In Vogue and John Bolton. So.
And I know, John, our page, I know you guys obviously made some investments in some of these things. Like, are you feeling good about those now, or?
Feeling good about the investments, and again, to be respectful of time, I'll go towards more of the customer feeling comfortable. I would go more towards that respect and kind of coming at the answer to the question. There are things operation like, for example, we've done the digital menu boards, which was mentioned, going towards a cashless operation, which again has a benefit to the convention center by doing things like that and facilities such as that. But just in the essence of time, I would say more of the feeling of the comfort. I did it twice. I'm sorry. The customer feeling comfortable. I had to stop making passionate arguments.
Well, I guess this is going to be our last question, so I'm going to give you an opportunity for a commercial. If you're trying to sell me on a job, coming back to fulfill labor, how would you sell me, and are there incentives, and why should I come back to be part of the hospitality and event industry in Columbus?
Wow. You guys want to take that one first?
I'll make mine short and sweet, too. We're a little bit biased, but we think we do the best events in Columbus. We do the Red, White, and Boom event. We do Columbus Marathon. We do the Game Day Concert Series for IMG Learfield College Sports Properties, I think they're called now, for the Ohio State football games. And so we offer a great experience for people to come to work for us to be part of that. We do events this year. Already, we did 2 shows in Florida, in Pennsylvania. We did a great show in Illinois, a graduation ceremony for high schools there. So we have the opportunity to travel. And we're just fun. We're fun people to hang around with, you know? So that's my commercial. That's all I got.
Okay. So this is what I say to people, because we're actually living this right now. So when the Symphony is looking for people, it's usually musicians, and we're pulling from across the United States. But this is what we're telling people, and we really mean it. We're developing a new model for symphonies here in America, right here in Columbus. We were known for taking care of our people during COVID. We are filling every open musician position we have at the Symphony right now. We've never done that in the entire time I've been with the Symphony. We're filling them all because we're hoping to pull from symphonies where musicians might have thought, well, why do I want to go to Columbus? I'm working for New York, right? So you can make a decision as a professional whether you want to work for a symphony that takes care of its people, or you want to work for a symphony that didn't. The New York Metropolitan Opera had no musicians, did not pay their musicians for 14 months. So we never reduced what our musicians were making. We're now filling all the positions. So you should expect, I know our mission statement doesn't talk about excellence, but you should expect a stronger, more excellent symphony moving forward, because we have established a name and a reputation for ourselves in the industry that makes people want to work for us because we take care of our people.
Well, you're already in utopia, so there's no greater city in the world to live in than Columbus within itself. So let's get that part of it out. Now, why do you want to come join us? If you want a career, not a job, this is the industry for you. If you want advancement that can happen for you sometimes very quickly, this is the career for you. If you want a career where when you're working, no 2 days are the same, and you don't have the monotony, and you get to meet people from all walks of life and have a different event coming to you, on a regular basis, this is the career for you. So it's one that it will recover. It's one that, although it's been set back, we've been resilient throughout the process. It's one that will continue to grow and advance. And if you're sitting here in Columbus, there's no better place to be in this career and in this industry where the sky's the limit.
Well, this has been a great group, and we wish we had more time to talk, but I'm going to turn it back over to Steve for concluding remarks.
Well, I hope you found a lot of useful information. The fact that you're sitting in this room, you're already attending live events, I would encourage you to attend more. I have tried to, in my personal life, get back and pretend COVID never hit and do those things that we've always done. And so hopefully we'll see a very robust rebound. And of course, our special appreciation and thanks to our speakers, John R. Page of the Convention Center. I think that's how we have to do it. Denise Rehg and John Page, with host Hayleigh Colombo. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us. We could not do this every week without you. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday as CMC presents another conversation. Thank you.